What I'd like to do with this second additional DVD is take each hand and foot to the next level. The first DVD was all about the techniques, the layered approach on how just to get the hands and foot down in a competent way. On this second DVD, I just want to push the rendering aspect of it and get into all the little nooks and crannies of, the knuckles and how to render all that information out. So what I'm going to do for you at home is I'm going to spend 45 minutes on one foot drawing that I've already started in the first DVD, and then I'm going to work on two hands. One hand is going to be roughly a half an hour, and I think the other one is 25 minutes. So really, in the grand scheme of things, an hour-long drawing is not a long drawing, but I think it's still, you'll get something from it. And I think at the end of this DVD, I'm also going to give you a bunch of drawings that I've said I was going to include, the anatomical drawings. All right, so let's get started. Now let's work on continuing this foot and rendering it out just a bit more than what it is. And I'm not going to put a time frame on this, but I just want to show you, if I had more time, what I would do next with this. So let's just kind of come on in here and maybe what the camera wants to do while I'm starting here, while I'm warming up a little bit, the camera just wants to look at the photograph of the foot for a split second, and then the camera can come back and look at what I'm drawing here. So I'm just going to pay a little bit more close attention to the details, and I'm going to really look at the bottom of the foot and try to make the contour a little bit more interesting and try to match the contour a bit more. And some of this stuff is going to roll up, and I feel on the first part of this DVD I showed you at home how to basically get the foot in. And so, the longest drawing might have been like 18 minutes, 20 minutes. So now, like I said, the second portion of this DVD is just going to be about me like rendering a little bit. So you can see the first step is just the contour. I want to just pay a little bit more attention to the contour. And since when I first started this DVD, I wasn't too concerned about realism. Some of my measurements are off. But I'm going to come in and I'm just going to try to fix some of them without doing total major surgery on the drawing that I have, because this particular pencil does not erase out. So I'm just going to do the best that I can. So now what I'm doing right now is I'm just really working on the side plane of this foot, and I've got that basic tone down. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to start to build on it, and I'm going to try to make everything a little bit more solid. And you can see I'm drawing, my pencil strokes are going with the lay of the folds of all the individual skin folds in the foot. And I'm really trying to keep with that, because that's going to show the viewer, once again, even if it's rendered, it'll still show the viewer that it's going to be round, that portion of the foot, that the arch that I was just working on, that tendon that wraps around the extensors. So right now I'm just doing all of the little skinny folds in this foot, and I'm just matching values right now, and there's like a little light on the side plane of that heel. Okay, so now let's come on in right below these extensors. Like right over here, what I'm working on right now is a bunch of tendons, and they go right to the bottom of the metatarsal right over here, first metatarsal to the big toe. So I'm just doing that underplane. And once again, there's a way to render and there's a way not to render. And what I'm first doing right now is I'm just doing a very soft, solid tone. Okay, and I'm not going too crazy with pencil direction lines. I'm going to do that as we go and as we kind of move on. But first, I just really want to get in a solid side plane shadow shape. Okay, and that's like really, really important that I get that. Now, this toe all of a sudden starts to have less and less of a side plane shadow shape, because it's becoming more of like in round oval, and the side of the foot is more of like a box. Okay, so now let's get this side plane of that phalanx. I gotta keep my lights light, keep my darks dark, and let's get in the side plane of this extensor tendon. And then this value over here is going to be a little bit more knocked down. So the thing that you got to ask yourself the question, this is like really important. Where's the lightest light on this particular foot? And if the camera's going to pan over to the photo, I think right now this perhaps might be one of the lightest lights. And then that is competing with these two on the veins and the extensors over there. And then the darkest dark, where is the darkest dark? Well, this could be one of my darkest darks right at an accent where one toe is touching another. And then over here, this is kind of dark as well. So everything goes down from there, and that's like you're going to be your kind of gauge as to what to do everything else in correlation to those two extremes. I hope that made sense for you. So now I'm going to just keep going here and making things solid, okay? Very solid with this, and I'm going to give some variation to this, some of those skin folds. All right, so this is where my extreme side plane of the arch of my foot. It's kind of like you got to think of the planes as like a kind of a suit of armor that a knight would wear, and if the armor was like welded together and welded around the body, it's not going to be in most instances perfectly like round. And totally gelled to his body. So you got to think of like these planes of armor that are kind of semi-boxy, semi-wrapping around. And that's what this is. Like this little shape like right over here could be like a plane of armor or a plate of armor. And then we've got like another plate of armor and then another plate of armor. So you got to think of it that way. I mean, yes, this is turning, but it's not going to turn so smoothly like a pure cylinder. And then the other thing that you've got to also keep into consideration is the big sentence. I'm going to say it a lot on the second portion of this DVD of keeping your lights light and keeping your darks dark and making a clear distinction between the two. And it's going to round itself slowly from the shadow into the light. It's not like a pure box, but you still want to keep your lights light. I hope that made some sense. And I'm going to just kind of shade in the whole side plane, back plane of this lower Achilles tendon going right into my tibia being the inside portion of the ankle. And this is a little extensor tendon right here, side plane of that tendon. And so you see how better that looks in terms of its solidity. I'm going to just push it a little bit more. So now let's push some more darks, and I think I'm going to take some artistic license and not... I've got two options here. This drawing that I'm doing is going to be the cover of this DVD, so I might push the values and not necessarily match them perfectly because I want them to work. I want this to be like a totally three-dimensional foot. I mean, the foot is formlit, but I can cheat a little bit and kind of manipulate the values. So that's another thing that you got to consider when you're working on your own drawings, illustrations, life drawings. Like, you got to know when you want to be a purist and when you want to just practice like matching the values. And then you want to know like when you're doing like an illustration, when you're going to manipulate the values. That's really important as well. Now, I manipulate the values all the time when I'm working on my illustrations. In life class, I really try to teach my students that before they manipulate the values, they have to really learn how to match them, and matching them is the hardest thing in the world when you're beginning. So then you try to have your drawing be like a 3-value drawing. I'm going to switch pencils. That one is kind of dull now. All right, so I'm going to, there's a lot of information I'm not working on in the lights, but I want to just push this shadow a little bit more. Pay a little bit of attention to some of these ball of the foot, some of the lines that roll on in, and just try to see when I do this, it just makes that contour like a little bit more three-dimensional. And it's hard for me to explain to you at home what these are, with the exception of, your foot bends so much and it needs to be very flexible. So these are just like all folds of skin. Like the skin is not super taut, really tight on the foot because it bends so much. So that's pretty much what all this stuff is that I'm drawing. It's all the folds. And then like when we get right into over here, this is just like a side plane of a vein and this is a side plane of a vein. And I mentioned earlier in the first portion of this DVD that veins are nothing but cylinders, and you just got to always remember, okay, where's the light coming from? And that's really how you want to think about doing your veins. So now let's get this toe. Let's go into the toes now a little bit. And I'm going to just pay attention to this edge. And I'm going to come on in over here, wrap in. And this stuff that I'm doing on these photographs, it's very hard to see this type of stuff on the photograph. This is where drawing from life and working from photographs is really highly related, because when you work from life, you see so many things that you wouldn't necessarily see on a photograph. So that helps the drawings that you work on from photographs. I remember when I first graduated from college, I would be working from life all the time because I was in like a life painting class. And then like a year or two out of college, I did what every other normal college student did. They just wanted to go out and try to launch their career and not think about school anymore and think about the things that you did in school and just focus on your little like niche. And that's what I did. And I forgot about painting from life and the importance, how important it was to my actual illustrations. And then I started working from photographs that I took for a couple years of the models for the particular books I was working on. And some of my paintings started to go flat simply because I didn't have all of the life study practice, under my belt. That kind of like went away. So now teaching the 3 classes and working from the models on my own, the life drawing thing is very fresh in my mind. And at minimum, I work with a model once a week. So all the different nuances that I get from life drawing, because you see so much more than a camera, just because you have 2 eyes and a camera is 1 eye. So you see all those beautiful convexes that the camera doesn't see, and you just try to incorporate that into your like drawing from a photograph. And I'm telling you, it makes a huge improvement on the 3-dimensional quality of your line. Okay, so what I'm going to do with this particular drawing is I'm going to probably take some little mini breaks and step back from it. Okay, but I'm going to do that in like a minute or two. Let me just do my first go through. And this has probably been like 10 minutes. But I think I'm going to take a couple breaks because it's very important when you're doing these long drawings. This is really not a long drawing in the grand scheme of things, but long for this DVD. It's very important that you step away. All right, so let's step away now and come back to it. I'm just going to use my eraser now. These lines from the initial drawing on the first DVD that I put down, just a little too dark for me. And so I'm just using this brush to kind of not, instead of using my hand, and it's just much easier to kind of get rid of all those eraser crumbs. And I'm using the eraser on my pencil. Now this particular pencil does not erase that good. And you got to be like really careful that you don't overdo it with this, because then your drawing will just kind of become like mud. So I'm going to also use my kneaded eraser. And then there's also something weird that happens with this colored pencil. And when you erase out like this, the eraser leaves like some weird like residue on the paper, and then the pencil doesn't necessarily like adhere as good as it does if you're just working with pure paper. So now I'm just going to kind of come on in now, and it's already happening. I can feel it with my pencil. I don't think it's going to make much of a difference on the DVD. So basically, the reason why I erased out that line is because this is front plane, top plane, and I don't necessarily want my darkest line over here. I want my darkest lines in the shadow. So if we're going to talk about like line quality, it's really important that in the light, I teach in my class that in the light you want to have like your light line, and in the shadow you want to have your dark line. So I'm just kind of trying to have my pencil strokes. You see the motion that I have with my pencil, I'm kind of like wrapping around, and then over here I'm just doing like some, that's just a phalanx that kind of wraps in a little bit, and then that's like the front plane, and then we wrap in again a little bit over here. So I'm just really trying to match the values, and I gotta really watch myself that I don't go too dark on the top plane. And then what I'm doing here is just like a little fold of skin, and tedious work, just matching the values. And I guess this tedious work was my entire youth in my 20s, so it's like no big deal to me. And it's just focus, concentration, and remaining like calm, and knowing what the end game is, knowing what you want to get out of the drawing. And you go into each drawing with a different type of end game. And when I work with a model, maybe I'll work with a model and my first hour will be short drawings, and then I'll set like a long pose with them. So see how I'm working on this contour now? I just made it like a little bit more exciting. And if I was working on pure white paper, it would be better, but the whole eraser thing is like messing me up a little bit. So I'm just going to keep going and keep my lights light, give some information. Let's give like a little bit more information of this last little phalanx. It's just like a tonal shift. And I didn't necessarily match the toe perfectly from the photograph, and that's cool with me. Okay, so let's keep going. And now let's subtly do some stuff on this top lane. And, sometimes in the past, I wouldn't be able to hold my pencil this way, where I'm holding the pencil like a little normal. I'd have to like hold my pencil this way, and I'd have to kind of do like this very light line, because I didn't have like this soft light touch that I talk about a lot in my class that you have to develop. Like you got to just be able to hold your pencil this way and develop like your light touch. And I guess the way you do that is by drawing every single day and just practicing doing the light stuff. I'm just going to get rid of that, make that a little wider, and a little bit more with that side plane. And now this tendon here, let's work on this tendon. Let's see, so I'm measuring the distance basically from here to here, and my measurements are off, but I'm going to go with it because I know if I erase out too much, then the drawing's going to start getting a little messy and muddy, especially on the top plane. I want to try to really keep the white of my paper pretty light, give some information, but not go too crazy with it. And okay, so there's a little turning plane tone right over here. And I've kind of like cheated, and I know what's going on underneath the skin. So I'm putting this line here on purpose just to give it some volume. And so it's really important, because when you look at a photograph, unless, the photograph is perfect focus, perfect exposure, you're not going to see every little ounce of detail. So this is where your knowledge of anatomy comes through, because now you know what to put down in lieu of the lack of information on the photograph, or if the photograph is slightly out of focus, so you know what's going on underneath there. And that's so helpful. Let me erase this out. I'm going to use my kneaded eraser a little bit more here. So let's do a little drawing now with the eraser. And at the end, maybe we'll kind of come on in here with some white chalk and just pop some highlights. So I'm just going to erase this out. I want this to turn a little bit, so I'm going to smudge that. Good. Yeah, I want to work on that section a little bit more. So just kind of roll in like what we do with these phantom lines with the figure. Let's get rid of some of the light over here, because this is really turning. And vary the line that separates so it's not such a straight line over here. And let's go back to this, there's always one spot of the drawing that you go back to, just because it's like, to me, I call it like home base. And for me, it's the torso on the figure. And just for any generic drawing, it would just be like the place that is easiest to draw. That's what you always go back to. So for me, it's like, for some reason, this looks easy for me. So I keep gravitating back to that spot, and that's like my originating spot. Like, I guess we're just going to call it home base. Okay, so now let's work on this tendon. And then this little hint of a vein crossing over the foot. Okay, so you gotta, when you're doing this type of drawing, you gotta every once in a while step back from it. This is looking a little light over here. Let's knock that down. And let's do some chiseling in the shadow. Making things just a tad sharper. And I think at this point of the drawing what I want to do is I just want to incorporate some minimal tone and talk about, because right now the background, the whole background basically is the modeling stand and it's all dark. So I just want to give like a little bit of atmospheric tone. So I'm just going to go with like a cast shadow coming over here. And the reason for the tone is just to create atmosphere. So when you do a drawing, it doesn't matter how realistic you render it. If you don't render it into an atmosphere, it's going to be flat. So like, see what I'm doing right over here? I'm going over my edge and I'm just kind of making up this like little kind of fake cast shadow. It's there, I see it. It's so faint. But since the light is coming from the left, my cast shadow is just normal. That my cast shadow would be to the right. Okay, so now you go over this, you put your cast shadow, you lose an edge, you blur it, and we're also going to lose an edge in the light. So now let me work with my eraser to define the shadow. And with cast shadows, the closer the cast shadow is to the object that is thrown at, the edge is sharper, like I'm doing right here. I'm sharpening that cast shadow edge. And then as the cast shadow rolls away, it starts to get like softer. It would be like really soft over here. And I'm just trying to do like minimal, really minimal cast shadow. And I'm just going to put some light background tone over here. And I'm just scribbling this. And in my class, I have this running joke. I call it the John Wayne tone, where you know, watch a John Wayne movie and he fades off into the sunset on his horse at the end, very stereotypical. And that's kind of like what you want your tone to do. You want it to just kind of fade off into the sunset. You don't want it to end abruptly. And some of this I'm just kind of making up for the aesthetic of the drawing. I don't want to just leave this foot on white paper. I want to have some atmosphere. I got to be careful over here because I'm going to work on this drawing a little bit more and this is all going to get smudged. And then the other thing that I do with my drawings is in the light, I will always break the line. So maybe over here I'll have this line almost like totally broken. I don't like the way that looks. What I'm going to do on this particular drawing, since this is going to be on the cover of the DVD, I don't want to break it totally. I want to leave it there. I want to put it in, have it almost semi-broken, but you know, so faint that you can barely see it. And that is a really good thing to do with your drawings. So basically, if this was one of my figure drawings, I would erase out this line totally, kind of just like that. And I would break it, and I'd have it like a little bit more graceful than what I just did. Because if you break the line in the light, and then you blur your shadow side plane into the cast shadow, that's how your drawing is going to start to look like a little bit more three-dimensional. And this little black line that I have over here is very flat. It's tough. Like, you gotta, in today's world, when you're doing a drawing, you gotta always try to think about how it's going to look on a website, because that's pretty much how you're going to present your work online. And so it needs to pop somewhat for the website, but you don't want to do your drawings just for that. You want to just do your drawings for your own style as well. But I think having your drawings work online is very, very important, and sometimes you just need to make things sharper. And I still think, like a purist, that I don't want to do too many digital changes. I want it to all be done with my hand on paper. Not that I'm against digital drawing, I'm into it, but for this stuff that I'm doing, I want it to be more of a purist type thing, where everything gets done with a pencil. Alright, so I'm just kind of doing this phantom stuff now. I'm wrapping around. The toes, the value of the toes are a little bit darker than over here. And so I'm just going to do like a little bit of a side plane to that vein. And we're going to roll in. Let's push this tendon right over here in front of the ankle. And I'm going to go back with my eraser in a bit. And this dark over here is kind of too dark. So I want to just tweak it. I'm going to go with a new pencil. I gotta clean this up. I think it's so dirty right now. that could also be another cool place where you break the line. But since this toe is in the foreground, I'm not going to do it there. I just want to soften this. And soften this, go over it a few times with this repetitive motion. And then press down harder. And that's your accent where the foot is touching the Mollin sand. It could be a little sharper. I'm going to come in now and work a sharp line. And roll some of this stuff in. And depending on what pencil you're using, you know, the paper is only going to take so much, and then you know that you're overworking it. And in this little section, I got to be careful that I don't overwork. And let's just kind of do some tone on the nail, because the nail is a top plane, and for some reason, the front plane of the nail, that little skinny line, is catching the light. So that makes it look a bit better, and it just adds like a little bit more dimension. So let me work like a little fold of skin. So you put the details on sometimes after you get like the structure. Alright, so I'm going to do this. Little side plane. And let me do a couple more like little detail lines over here that I don't want to overdo them, but they have to go there. And just some tonal variations. Okay, let's do the side plane of this tendon. And so every once in a while, like I'll probably stop the camera again in a little bit, because again, I'm really working this area and I gotta be careful I don't destroy the lights. So what I'm gonna do is just push. I can do this. I can kind of just come on in here and push the line that separates. And then as soon as I do that, boom, you get like that side plane established again. And that's my dark halftone, what I just did there. So let me just, now I'm going to just establish, go back into my shadow and work this a little bit more and just make this thing roll under, a little underplane. Work this heel. And again, there's like a little underplane over here. So all these like little plane shifts, very tedious, but if you want to go with something that looks semi-realistic and really dimensional, you have to give all these like little subtleties in the tone. Again, it's all about your end game, and you go into the drawing knowing what you want and really being clear on, with some drawings, on where you're going with this drawing. Is it going to be a 20? Is it going to be a long one? Is it going to be a short one? So then like you lessen the dissatisfaction that you can get sometimes if you do a drawing and you're like, oh, it doesn't look like the way that I wanted it to. Well, what did you want it to look like in the first place? Did you want it to be realistic? Did you want it to be like a little shorty? Did you want it to be, you know, totally rendered out? What was your purpose for the drawing? And I think when you do that and you're really clear, then you know, you just get better results. All right, so let me push. I'm losing this ankle. It's getting like a little soft. So I'm going to chisel it. Yeah, so that kind of pops. Get that bone showing under there, even though it is kind of soft. And get this turning plane. And believe it or not, you know, this part of the leg now is getting a different, becoming a different value. And so I got to do my best John Wayne over here to fade this thing off. Not sure, you know, there's places that you want to crop your drawings, and I tell my students a lot in class, because we run into this situation all the time. Where do I end the drawing if I don't have time to do a full figure drawing and I just want to do a little study? Well, I guess the general thing is you never crop your drawings at a joint. So like the worst place for me to crop this would be right at that ankle joint. So I'm kind of like cropping it more mid-bone. It could be higher, but I don't want to go too high because it's about the hand and foot, this DVD. So I think that's like more like a comfortable place to crop it. And so I want to just add like a little bit more detail over here. All right, so now I could do a reverse gradation. Reverse gradation would be I'd put like a little tone over here to pop the light. And then, you know, you really set up a background. But I think I'm going to not do that this time. I think I'm going to just work this foot a little bit more. Let's step back from this and then we'll come back to it. All right, so I stepped back and, there's parts of this drawing that I like and there's parts that I don't like. And you got to be like really careful when you do this style of drawing because you can really start to have your drawings look like cotton, like when you do this very soft rendering. So what I'm going to do at the end, hopefully will take the cotton effect out of like this tone. And then I have this class where I teach texture with a pencil. And so the direction of your pencil strokes will determine the texture. So, right now I'm doing like this kind of soft, fuzzy type of thing. And, when you do that soft, fuzzy type of thing, that's how you get cotton. Okay, so I just, I noticed that when I step back from the drawing, and I got to be careful that I don't get too much of that. And this is too light. It's really important. Like right now I've got the photograph right next to my drawing. And when you're working at home, you should really have multiple photographs of like the same still. So like one photograph should be like right next to your drawing. One you should put on a wall far away from you so you can look at it from far away so you don't have to constantly get up like I'm doing with stopping the tape. And you also should have one that's overexposed, one that's totally underexposed. Like you should have like multiple photographs around your space. And then what you also want to do is look at your drawing in different lights. So, take the drawing out of your studio or out of your room and look at it in a different room. Like maybe look at it in a room where there's sunlight coming in, or maybe look at it in a hallway that is very dark. And basically, I do that with my illustrations. So what I used to do is I'd work on an illustration. It would be in my office, and my office would be really, really bright from the lights that I had over my easel. And then I would bring it into an art director's office, and that art director's office had no light, and the shade was closed, and out the window it was against another big building, and the only thing lighting the office was the computer screen. So when I brought my painting into that office to show the art director, it didn't work in there. So it's really important that your drawing or your painting works in all different light sources, dark room, light room, and look at it from really far away as much as you possibly can. And when you're working in a classroom setting and you're working from a model, don't be afraid to get up and look at your drawing. Don't I see so many students, they come in, they plant their butt on the chair and they do not want to get up. It's really important that you're a little bit more interactive with your posture and you get up and you move a little bit in a life drawing class, and don't just sit in the same spot and never move. So I get up and I look at my drawings as much as I possibly can without being annoying to the person that's next to me. It's really good to do that. Or if you not into getting up, at least try to lean back as far as you can without falling over on whatever you're doing, whatever you're working on, a drawing horse or a chair, whatever they have in the particular classroom. So I'm just kind of coming around, and I just wanted to chisel some of that stuff out and get rid of some of these lights. So now let me just push this one more time, and then I want to put in some line, and then I'll go through it last time with the tone. So just let's wrap around. It's metatarsal. So we've got a phalanx here, a phalanx here. This tone over here is the side plane of the metatarsal, the end of it, and that's what I'm doing right there. And okay. Let me just kind of put some tone down. There's a tonal shift from these toes to the top of the foot, and that happens a lot. That's a pattern that you want to look for. That's a little indent in that phalanx. And I should go sharper here. Let's just try to sharpen this up a little bit. And this is where that light touch really comes in handy. And let's just kind of do the same thing over here now. A little bit more paying attention to this tonal shift. I'm not digging this so much, but again, with this pencil, you got to pick your battles. If I was going to do a really super long drawing, a days, not hours, probably do it with a mechanical pencil on Bristol paper because it erases out so well. Even if you press down really hard, it still erases out. This thing, I just love the feel of this pencil so much. So again, like I said, pick your battles, and not everything's going to be perfect. So you gotta, each pencil is going to have a new dilemma. It's going to be given to you. So the dilemma with this pencil is that you can't really erase. It's always going to leave some mark. Okay, so let's just keep pushing, and let me work on this cast shadow. And now I want to just kind of go over some areas with line in a bit after I just work on this tone. I don't want there to be too much of a pencil stroke noticeable. I just want it to be like a generic type of soft tone. So the cast shadow is going to be like a little bit darker over here next to the object that is casting it. And then as the cast shadow goes away, the edge gets softer, but it also gets lighter. All right, so now let's go back in here and let's work with some line. And let's just chisel. So I'm really working the edge here. When you do this, it flattens your drawing out. But I don't care right now about that too much because I want this thing to pop on a cover. The cover being this DVD cover. So you got to kind of find like a happy medium. And so I have this in the back of my mind, so other things have to be sacrificed. So total 3-dimension has to be sacrificed for this thing to pop. And I think what I'm going to do is get a sharper pencil. Yeah, I really want this to be a really hard edge. And hopefully it'll be coming right off of the page. So now don't just work on the contour, roll in any chance that you get. And so this, I'm going to have this roll in. I just kind of got a little sloppy with that edge. And some like little details over here with a really sharp pencil. Because like I said earlier, it started getting too cottony for me. And let's go back. This thing's going to roll. A little dark over there with that, but that's cool. And this is really muddy. I'm going to try to fix this with some white pencil. And let's just kind of give a little bit more detail with each phalanx. And you see, I mean, I could go a tad more detailed in the light, but I feel like if I do that, I'm going to start getting way too muddy. So I kind of want to almost like leave it empty. And let's just work this. Always with the roundness. Okay, so I'm going to lean back and look at this. I think I'll do a little bit more at the ankle area. So now when I'm working on this drawing, I'm really leaning back. Almost to the point where I feel like I'm going to fall off my chair. And trust me, you'll know if I fall off the chair because the whole camera will go with me. And let me just work these veins a little bit. I could work this a little bit with my kneaded eraser. This is just a side plane of that tendon. And so I'm leaning back now and I'm looking at this. I'm going to work this underplane. It's I think it's a little bit more satisfying for the person at home when I go from like scratch from like white paper to like foot or white paper to hand. The rendering, you know, yeah, it's a little bit more tedious, but I think it's important that I'm going to do a couple of DVDs where I render because some people want to learn how to do that. And, you know, a teacher in a classroom setting doesn't necessarily have all the time in the world to sit there and render. It would really put all the students to sleep if they did that. So I think it's good to hang out, cup of coffee at home, and just kind of watch this and relax and just see how I'm like dancing around the drawing and how I'm like moving the pencil around and how I'm leaning back and just keeping my lights light, keeping my darks dark. And so just a couple of choice lines. I'm going to do a choice line right over here, underplane of that ankle. Let me get my eraser and let me see if I can just side plane of that vein. Side plane over there. And I'm also now going to go into this where the eraser lines are not coming out. They are just ingrained into this paper. And I'm going to just pop some stuff with this white chalk. Okay, good. I'm sure that sounds great on the video. Okay, so you want to be minimal with this. You don't want to overdo it. Little side plane right over there. As soon as I start to rub this with my finger, it's not going to be good. So unfortunately, I got to blow it a little bit with air, because as soon as I rub it, it's gone. It's going to be smudged. And again, with this type of thing, you got to be minimal. I'm just going to clean that edge a little bit. And this, I'm going to... These highlights are mainly where the bone is extremely close to the skin. And there's no, like, muscle. It's all, like, bone. It's all, like... Highlights are going to be on plane shifts. Alright, so that's where I'm kind of keeping it minimal. And even, like, right over here, this extensor tendon is, like, right on the edge of the skin. So I'm just going to go over that a few times. I don't know if you can notice, like, any difference. Okay, good. So now I'm going to lean back. And I can even, you know, if I wanted to, do some of this in the shadow. But I think what I'm going to do is just keep the highlights with the white chalk in the light. And I'm going to clean some of this up. Go over my line and maybe sharpen this. Alright, so I think we're coming down to the short roads now with this drawing. I don't want to overdo it. Certain parts of it I like, certain parts of it I don't like. I just want to work on it just maybe for a couple more minutes. And then we're going to move on to a hand. And this could be a little bit smoother. I'm just doing like a short little choppy stroke to soften that. And I'm believe it or not, I'm blending with this. I could take my brush now and just kind of tap this, and that will kind of turn it a little bit. I do that sometimes with my paintings, where I'll just take that big brush and I'll tap it. So I'm going to go over this like one more time. It depends. I could be a purist and not use any of this like white chalk, but I think it's fun. I think it's something that's just going to add like another dimension for me to show you at home. Let me just work on this a little bit more, I think. And now the last thing, I want to just clean up this edge. So that should be really dimensional. And then you look at the line in my light of the top plane of the foot, which I'm not digging too much. I'm kind of losing it a little bit over here. It's getting like a little messy. But look how much lighter it is. Let me go over it just a little bit with my light touch. And just pay attention to this. It's not necessary that you render out every little nuance of your drawing. Some of the most realistic paintings and drawings have a section in them that is kind of left unfinished. It could be a distant, tree line. It's just a shape of the tree line. You don't render out every little individual branch. And so you want to take that into consideration when you're working on your drawings at home, not to render every square inch of your drawing, and you gotta leave some areas of your drawing empty. Okay, so let me lean back from it with the tape rolling. I think we're gonna leave it at that. All right, let's move on to drawing a hand. Alright, so I've got like another hand here that I started on the first DVD, and let's push it a little bit more. So I've got some of these angles lines. Now what I can do with those is, sometimes you just gotta kind of use this term, you just gotta like kind of overpower your drawing and take full control of it and not worry about screwing up. So I'm just kind of going over all of that stuff. And so I've gotten rid of the angles lines a little bit, and then if I wanted to, I can just erase that out. That's no big deal. That's not even in the image. I can turn that into tone as well, but you know what? Let me just kind of work a little bit more actually with this eraser. I want to erase out the top planes, and yeah. Okay, so now let's just kind of go on in here and do the same thing that we did with that foot. And I'm going to start, where do you start a drawing? You start a drawing with what looks easiest to draw first. And so for me, I always like to cling on to the edge. And for some reason lately, I've been very edge, I guess, centric, where I'm just able to really get the edge, and I just like to work from there. And it's not the best practice. Like, working on just the edge is not always what you want to do, because all the important stuff is really on the interior. But you know, I'm not giving myself too many rules, and I wouldn't give yourself too many rules either. You just gotta, some days you just gotta go with what works. And lately for me, the phase is, because you go through phases also as an artist, the phase is working on the edge is working for me. Okay, so now let's just roll on in and let's repeat the process that we did with the foot, and let's solidify the shadow shapes. Okay, so let's just kind of get rid of all the lights, and there's beautiful tons of convexes that are rolling in. But first let me just solidify this edge. I'm sorry, I'm thinking as I'm drawing here, solidify the tone. Pencil's just way too dull. Whoops. All right. Okay, so I'm just chiseling this out, and I'm coming on in. Let's pay more attention to the edge, and let's roll in. And now let's just look at the side plane of that little cylinder finger and knock it down. It's kind of like a little flat. Okay, so there's like another little fold of skin right over there. Cool. So now let's move to this finger and solidify the shadow tone on the side plane. And let's pay attention to the shadow shape of the nail. And this nail is going to come in. Okay, and the tone of the nail is not white, because it's kind of semi-turning under, and then you really got to have a sharp pencil for this, and I forgot to sharpen my pencils before we started. There's like a little top plane like right over there that's catching light, and yeah, I made that nail too. Alright, we're going to fix all this. Oh boy, oh boy. We're back. Let's pay attention to this. And I'm just looking at this little convex that's going to roll in to that nail. And then we have this little skinny top plane. Okay, so now this thing comes out. I'm paying attention to my angles. Comes in. Comes out. Comes in. So now I'm going to just go over the whole thing and just, you know, make sure that it's flowing and it's not stiff. It started getting a little stiff on me right over there. This thing's going to come right on in. How do you get rid of stiffness? No straight lines. So I'll get rid of some of my straight lines, and the measurements on the hands from the initial drawing on the first DVD are off. So I'm kind of trying to work with that aspect of this drawing that's not 100% dead on. Alright, so now I'm just getting this dark halftone over here. It's just like where the front plane of that finger turns to the side plane. So I'm just doing that like little dark halftone over there. And now this is just cast shadow. And let's darken this line. So this finger comes in front of the other, and now this little fold of skin is going to wrap around. Okay, and we've got like a little cast shadow. And let's solidify this side plane tone. Okay, I'm not digging this finger. I made the nail too long. But let's go with the Ferris wheel metaphor that we are going to keep moving around the drawing and not get stuck in an area, because that area will bring us down and we will lose sight of the big picture. Always want to keep sight of the big picture, and then you can go back and fix the minutia if you're not happy with it. Okay, so now let's make this finger come in front of that one. So now this is going to wrap in. And this is going to come on in. And most of this is turning under, so it's going to be in shadow. And the side plane and the front plane are just going to kind of gel into one. And most of the nail is under plane. Okay, cool. So now let's not overdo it. Let's move on. And now let's just get rid of all the lights on this finger. So now the finger almost becomes like flat, like a flat tone, because it's all shadow. So now we're just working side plane, and we're bringing it to the next level. The next level is just going to be like a little bit more rendered out. And so we're not going to be seeing every little individual line that I was rushing to finish this for you in the first DVD. Now we can just take our time. This actually is going to come on in. So this is something that I'd get out of like life drawing class. I don't see that on the photo, but I know it's there. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of do something like that. And this is a little rim light on that finger. So I'm just going to come back in and just pay attention to the shape of that. And now we've got front plane wrap in, couple lines over there, a little dark halftone. And let's make this shadow shape, cast shadow shape I should say. Let's pay attention to this a little bit better. And yeah, over here. And let's just have this thing roll around a little bit more gracefully. Dark halftone. Okay, cool. So now this is just going to wrap up. And now let's keep going with the shadow shapes. We'll do our line after. Little side plane of the palm of the hand. And now this is going to, let me sharpen this pencil. Let's pay attention to this line. So I'm not giving myself too many rules. You know, I'm not just working on one thing at once, like just a tone. Normally what I like to do is work all middle tone first and save my blacks for last. But I'm not going to give myself too many rules. I'm just going to have fun with it. And if I was having problems with a drawing, well, that's when I would adhere to the rules totally. Because, you know, then I just want to be a purist with the drawing and try to get through the problem that I'm having. And then, you know, right now I don't seem to be having too many issues with the drawing, so I'm kind of just flowing along. So I'm having a good time with it. But if I'm struggling, or if there's something that I'm not getting, then I'll go back and I'll be like a purist with all my like ideas, and you know, go back to doing the angles in a very purist type way. I'll go back to looking at the negative space in a very purist type way. I'll do all that stuff to like, you know, perfect. But now I'm just having fun and I'm just rendering. But I am going to just at least stick to making my lights light and making my darks solid, or having them be a little pure, a little bit more solid. So that will just be a light halftone that wraps around. This is my dark halftone. Short, choppy stroke. Okay, so this is all catching light, and then we're just kind of like turning under. And let's just pay attention to the palm of the hand. And we've got all these like wonderful folds of skin. Okay, so this is wrapping around. Remember, I gotta keep my lights light. I'm seeing like a lot of purple aspects of the skin, very see-through with all the veins. You know, you gotta pick your battles. You gotta know what veins to put in and which ones to leave out. Okay, so this line that I put down, I'm sure what I was showing you on the first DVD was the line that separates light from the dark. So I'm just going to go back and soften it, and I'll probably soften it again later. with the white chalk and the eraser like I did on the foot. So I'm just make this a little solid, and now let's roll it in to the side plane of the wrist. And then let's do our best John Wayne and fade this off because we don't want to break this drawing at the wrist. It really looks like a box on the photo. It's unbelievable. This is going to wrap in carpals where they attach to the radius and the ulna. And I can really hear my stomach growl, and I hope the mic is not picking it up. Hopefully it's not. So this stuff, all these like wrinkles, folds in the skin, you got to put them in just because they're going to show the form, and you don't want to leave this area just totally blank, but you just got to really press down lightly with your pencil and do not over render. And remember what I said earlier, that you want to have a couple of areas of your drawing empty, because some of the best realistic pieces that I've seen have an area that is empty and abstract and loosely done. This is turning under. Okay, so let me go back to this. Lots of little goodies over here. Let's just soften this, and this is just gonna not be as light as the palm of the hand. So I'm going to put atmosphere, and I'm actually going to put some atmosphere over here. So this is what I would call like the reverse gradation, and since I've got like a lot of messy lines from this drawing initially with the angles, I want to put this in to hide some of those lines. And this tone that I'm doing right now is going to be like a little bit darker than the palm of the hand. And technically I should break the light. I'm sorry, break the line in the light. But I like the way that it looks right now, so I'm just going to leave it. And this I'm going to just kind of gel into that. So that's all the tone I'm going to do for now. And now let's just step back from this drawing, and I got to sharpen these pencils. Let me work on this drawing for like another 6 minutes, and then we'll kind of bring it on home with another like little sequence. But again, I'm just really reinforcing to you at home the importance of like coming back away from your piece. So I'm going to do the same thing now that I did on the foot that I just rendered out, and I'm going dark with my line on the shadow side of this hand. And I understand now what's going on underneath the skin with the metacarpals and the flanges, so I know where to kind of wrap in. So I'm wrapping in right over there, even though I don't really see that too much on the photograph. Like, it's when you see those subtle gradations of tone in the photograph, you know something's going on underneath the skin. And so I know when we're doing this hand, I know we're doing these metacarpals, so I know that's where I gotta kind of wrap in with my line. So, you know, the tone on the photograph leaves the clues, so you really got to pay attention if you're working from a photograph, which is what we're doing here today. So let's pay attention to this. Make this thumb come a little bit more in front, and this will roll in. I got to be careful, I don't want to have the appearance of cross-hatching. But I know I gotta just do some lines that go this way, some that go that way. But you know, the end result, I don't want the end result to be cross-hatching. Alright, so I just sharpened that thumb up. It looks pretty decent. So now what I can do is a short little choppy stroke over here. This is, in essence, what I'm doing is my light halftone. I just want to have this thumb turn a little bit more. Okay, good. So now let's push it. My lights on the thumb are really dirty right now, so I'm going to do that at the end with a white chalk. This is underplane. Let's move around to the top plane of this wrist, and basically what we got over here is like a little vein. Keep my lights light. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of goodies going on over here with the veins and the bones. And so this is going to just be my, it's reversed, I believe. This is the radius. And then this is muscle and tendon. Gravity is pulling this down. Wrap around. Thumb muscles. Let's go back into the center line. And really let's push this fold of skin, make it a little bit sharper. Okay, so now I'm going to lean back and I'm going to work on the line of this with a new sharp pencil. Okay, cool. So this is going to always think in gravity. I guess gravity is like huge. Gravity is like a nice little secret technique that, you know, if you want your drawings to look just a tad more realistic, you got to understand that what you're drawing when you're drawing a figure is somebody that is made up of 90% water. And so gravity really affects water. So it does not matter how many hours the individual that you're drawing has been in the gym. When that person is at rest and you're drawing them, gravity is having a huge effect on their muscles if their muscles are not tense. So everything is going to slightly sag down. So if you can try to get some of that sag, not so much with fingers, I mean, I see it a little bit in this drawing, but mainly on your mainly on your body. Big, huge muscle groups like the quads, like the butt, like the abs, that kind of stuff, gravity's really going to affect that. I think we're going to be ending this drawing soon because I have something in my throat that is driving me bananas. Alright, so let me go over this dark halftone with a vertical or lay of the land line. And let me sharpen the nail area. Yeah, that looks better. It's too fuzzy there. Again, the line is going to get rid of the cottony quality. And go slow with your movements. You don't always have to go super fast, especially when you're doing the line. Just move your pencil slower. Okay, so I'm just working. This is like a ball shape right over here, but I'm not seeing the whole ball. I'm just seeing parts of it, and I just got to promote this. This is a cool little halftone. I'm going to erase out the highlight. It's going right down the center. And there's a little cast shadow over here that I'm going to leave it out because it'll look weird. Alright, so let's do this. Let me get this frog out of my throat, and we're going to come back in a little bit and finish this hand off. Let's continue with this drawing now, and let me just keep pushing subtle details here for you, because that's what this is all about, the subtle details. So let me go to this little nail, and let me just kind of roll in. Okay, so the rolling in part, I can't tell you how crucial it is, and I really have to be careful because it sounds silly when I say roll in too much, especially it starts to become like a song. But rolling in is crucial to having your drawings look three-dimensional. Now, I think when I say most teachers don't like when you work just on the contour, it's because if you just work on the contour and you don't do what I'm doing right now, roll in, breaking your pencil point, and then coming over here to establish that little joint, the last phalanx of that finger, then your contour line, that's when it goes flat. This thing I gotta get the feel of this pencil. So I'm just gonna come on in and make this a little bit darker. Let me pay attention to this little plane. And this cast shadow, I'm going to make this cast shadow a little bit darker. And push the dark halftone, which is in essence the line that separates the light from the dark. Push this cast shadow. My reflected light over here is a little too light, but I'm going to leave it. And I'm just going to come around with a short pencil stroke right here. Okay, that looks better to me. And then just go over it vertically. Go over this, pay attention, lean back from the drawing. Sharpen this. I gotta be careful I don't go too black with the nails. And this is, I'm just gonna break the line over here. I'm not gonna totally outline it. Now this nail, I don't know what was going on here before, but I just think that I lost it a little bit, the shape of the nail. So I came back now, and I think that's like a little better than what it was before, just with promoting that line. And then just let's promote that side plane. And yeah, dark halftone right over here. So this is a plain edge. And let me promote this and this. So let's go back and push this dark halftone and that little line over here. Let's pay attention to these lines now. So fold of skin. And let's chisel this. It's getting too soft. You know, I almost liked it soft because then that finger goes back into the distance. And as soon as I sharpen the edge, it gets a little flatter. Let me see what happens when I sharpen the edge a little bit right over here. And yeah, let me just do it a tad more with that fingertip. And that fingertip is too wide, big time too wide. I see it now. So I'm going to turn this mistake into a positive. I'll just turn that into background tone. And yeah, let me do that right now for you. So sometimes those mistakes, don't freak out by them. You just, you know, that's just going to be tone now. And I did lose the light on the top plane of that finger just because I'm getting a little muddy over here. And I didn't anticipate having this drawing be a long drawing when I was working on it when we were doing the shorties. Okay, that's decent. Not perfect, but I'll take it. So now let me just go back and show you this little tonal shift. Little line over here. Okay, let's go back up top now and work this vein area. And that vein. Pay attention to the contour. It's all the veins right there. And let's just kind of, like I said earlier, that this value on the top plane of the wrist is not going to be as light as the front plane. So let me just work that a little bit for you, and I'm just going to come around with my tone and go over this edge. And this I'm actually going to have come right on into that vein. So now I like that contour a lot. That looks pretty cool. So this comes right into the spine of the hand, which is this imaginary thing. You're just going to think center line. Tonal gradation again. And a little bit more to make all this stuff pop and make it look round and not so flat. Let's go over this roundness, and right over here again, let's go over this roundness. And I believe that this was my negative space line. Alright, so I'm gonna just maybe go against the grain and go like a little darker. I want this finger to really come in front. And I'm going to go really dark with it in some strategic locations. And let me get this nail in. Remember, less is best, so sometimes the less information you put, the better. And this could be a little sharper. I'll fix that with the white chalk pastel pencil at the end. Okay, let's come around that finger and give ourselves... This would be my dark halftone, which is in essence the line that separates. And now this tone is my light halftone. And I'm just going to go wrap around. I'm not a big fan of doing it that way. I could even come this way. I can do it with my finger. Some people like to blend that with a blend-in stump. I'm really not into blend-in stumps at all that much, just because I think when people use them, they overwork everything, and everything gets too cotton candy-ish. Okay, so let me define this and roll under to that underplane of that like little indent fold of the skin. Okay, so this is not pure white. This is like a turn-in plane. Alright, so let me lean back now. I'm leaning back. I think I need to soften some stuff over here. I'm going to make this a little darker. And this thing I want to promote a little bit too. I'm going to work with my eraser a little bit now. I just think that this is just too hard edge. Yeah, sometimes drawing with your eraser like that is all that you need. Little highlight going right down the center. That's totally light. So now let's work on the background just a tad more. This thing is just not cooperating with me today. And side plane of that nail. Let's go back now and do the tone. And this is just so you have the, see, same thing. I am totally blending the thumb into the background tone. And I'm not so concerned about, almost like when you're a little kid, when you're in a drawing class, you're afraid to color outside of the lines or have the tone touch the line. I'm just like, these are just gelling in together. That's atmosphere right over there. And then, you know, this would be like a blurred edge. And then this would be like a little bit dark over here in my dark halftone, light halftone, highlight, which I'll do with the chalk, which hopefully will pop. And then we start all over again. And then this is just going to be a little bit darker. But since this part is going back a few inches into the background, I'm not going to go over this with my dark line. I think what I really want to have pop is this finger. So I'm going against my rule of dark line only on the underplanes just because I want that foreground finger to come forward. So I'm doing it both. Let me just roll some more stuff in. Okay, good. And this thumb, I really want to have it come forward. And let's just kind of promote this. An underplane line. Convex. Gravity. Turn-in plane. Okay, so this I think needs a little bit more work. It's too vague. I'm not quite sure how long we've been working on this hand. I should know that. But what I'm going to do is work on it a little bit more. And I'm going to step back for the last time. And then perhaps we'll work on like one more drawing for this DVD. And we'll call it a DVD. But once again, the point is the first drawings were so short that I think it's like really important that you see me like render a hand out. And it's just, you know, you still get a good sense of the light and shade. Some of my darks can be like a little bit darker now that I just like step back from it. And I'm going to do that like right now, actually. I'm going to make this finger a little bit darker. And just promote that dark halftone. And just, sometimes the darker you go with it, the more three-dimensional it becomes. And believe it or not, I think I was going to do some tone there, but then I second-guessed myself because I want this finger to pop. And pop happens when you have contrast. So black line against white paper is going to be the contrast right over there. Alright, so let's step back and just work on this tone a tad. And then next what I'm going to do is pick up the white pencil. So I'm fading off. And this you just can do any way that you want. You know, I'm just kind of going with this diagonal motion. I kind of don't want it to distract from the hand. I want it to fade off and want it to promote the hand. And sometimes when I see students in class, what I'm doing right now, they'll be pressing down so hard and then it becomes about the tone. And it doesn't become about the object that the student is drawing, the figure or the background or whatever. So you got to be careful with that background tone that you incorporate the three value system. So that's kind of like a light middle tone, that's a light, and then my dark is going to be my line. Let me see what happens when I get a new pencil. And I just pop a couple more edges here with this. So just putting things into perspective. Long drawing is what? Long drawing would be days for me on my own. I'd just be like nitpicking, stepping back, looking at the drawing. This is not even an hour. This maybe it might top out as an hour. So in the grand scheme of things, it's not really long. An hour is short, and an hour is really short in a classroom setting. So when I say long drawing, okay, it's still short, but it's long for a DVD time span. Okay, so let me just go a little darker and work a little faster for you. I'm going back to the straight shading up and down just because it's a quick way to do it. And then you just go back and layer on top one more time the round. And let me just pay more attention to this. Okay, I'm going to step back and we're going to come back into this drawing and finish it off. What I want to do here is I just want to tap this with this, and I normally don't do this, but I'm just kind of having fun with it. And the key to realism sometimes is all about edges. So I'm softening everything, and then I'll pop some edges at the end. Okay, so what I should have done during the break is sharpen this thing, and my sharpener is just not like creating like a nice point for me today. Let's this finger here, I'm so not digging. It really looks awkward to me, but I'll do my best to fix it and not get too caught up with it because it looks fine. It's not perfect. It's so not perfect to me, but I think it's good enough. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm just making this finger hopefully look like a box. And I think what I need to do is just come on in. And this nail here, my goodness, what is going on? So I'm just going to do like that soft tone. And let's give myself a nice sharp edge. So this finger comes in front of that one. And I'm going to keep the last one light like that. I think that's working better. I'm not going to kind of go any darker with it because I want it to go back into the atmosphere. And I just am really trying to get this thing a little bit more solid. There was something about it I didn't like. Can't quite put my finger on. No pun intended. I can't quite put my finger on it. I didn't mean that. That just kind of came out naturally. So let's just keep going now. And what I tend to keep doing on this drawing, and this might be a good lesson for you at home, is I keep matching the values, in essence, is what I'm doing here, because I want it to look a little bit more like the hand, and I like this hand a lot. That's why I chose this. And I keep going darker with the values, and I think the darker I go with the values, the more I like it. Okay, so now let's work on the palm of the hand just a little bit more, and when I step back from the photo, I really saw this like imaginary line. It's like right here, and I can't explain what it is, and you got to be careful that you don't do it too dark, but it's there. I call it a phantom line, and it's just basically a plane shift, and you separate that plane shift with that very light phantom line, and it has something to do in a figure drawing class with a muscle difference or a muscle shift from one muscle to another. This is just all about a plane shift. So there's a highlight that's going down this way. It's like a horseshoe shape, and I'm going to have to try to accomplish that with the white pastel pencil. So I'm just trying to show that plane shift a little bit to give this area like a little bit more of a ball shape. And now I need to get a different pencil. 1 second. Sharp pencils are key, and there's a lot of like things that I haven't quite captured. Like there's all these very cool lines that come on in. I'm gonna put some of them in without putting you to sleep. Let's see. This is a little sharper, and this is gonna totally roll into these lines. Yeah, let's work on this a little bit more. And there's a couple of lines like right over here. This is the type of lines that I'm doing right now is so not important on a short drawing. Okay, let's go a little darker. And let's just promote this one more time. This is ending too abruptly, so I need to kind of soften it out. Put another one right here. This is Gonna wrap around too. If I wanted to, I can add more and more of these, but I just don't want to overkill it. This is a little thicker, this tone. Let's squint at it. You know, I always tell my students, and I learned this when I was in school, you squint at the model, or you squint at the still life, or whatever object you're drawing, and it takes away all of the detail, and you just look at the basic light and shade. And so I'm squinting right now at the photo, and what that does is it shows me the subtle gradations on the palm of the hand. And when I'm doing the palm of the hand right now, I still have to take into consideration, all right, Matt, don't ruin your lights. Do not make this detail as dark as the side plane of these fingers. And believe it or not, I'm going to make this a little darker. And this I'm going to make sharper. Yeah, that's cool. Push this line, the blackness of it. As long as we roll in, we can do that. Come in right there. Okay, good. This is really, I could just all the way here on the underplanes, all the way up to the wrist, promote this. And this is really, if I'm working for a website to show my work online, I probably would just pop this a little bit more. All the way on the underplane. Go over this, and then you can also do it with a really cool continuous line where you don't lift your pencil off of the page. And now look at how this finger, let me balance it. Look at how these fingers in the foreground are coming in front of that one in the background. Look at how that one in the background is really going back. Why? Because I don't have a hard edge line. I'm not outlining. I broke the line over here. Really soft tone, similar values over there. I'm going to just really be extreme, just to kind of go overboard with my point about the line quality and in some choice areas. Just pay attention to the line variation. Line variation in your drawing is very important to give your drawing that nice look where everything doesn't look so flat. I see these line drawings, they are so flat because the quality of the line, that meaning the thickness of the line and the light and darkness of the line, are all the same. There's no variation in it. All right, so now let's just work with a little bit with the white chalk, and I think then we're just going to kind of close this drawing out. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to, if this is going to work for me, if you're even going to notice it. So there's like a little highlight. And you're going to have to excuse my blowing noise of the white chalk. If I do it with my fingers, it's just going to smudge. So it just needs to sit on the surface. Okay, that's cool. I see that highlight. Highlight over here. Highlight over here. Good. And highlight definitely over here. I gotta be careful I don't break this pencil on camera. That wouldn't be good. So go over this a couple times. Press down hard. Build up the layer of chalk. It may not happen like in your first, like, let's just call it brush stroke. Sometimes what you have to do is you just need to go over it, go over it, go over it. Okay, good. And now I'm going to just pop some stuff over here on the little finger muscles. Yeah, and then this is underplane, so there shouldn't be any over there. Let me just make this one a little thicker. And now I'm going to sharpen this. These pastel pencils break very easily, and if I show the camera the pencil, it's just a very simplistic white pastel type pencil, white charcoal. It could be white charcoal, it could be white pastel, whatever you prefer. If you do decide to buy one of these for some minimal highlights, they break very easily. So you have to treat them with tender love and care, and once you drop them, the pastel breaks inside the wood shaft. So every time you go to sharpen it, it's total frustration because the pencil keeps breaking inside the sharpener. So you can buy like a $2 pencil and it'll break constantly, and you'll go through it in like 5 minutes of sharpening, and that's very frustrating. So just treat them with tender love and care, and they'll last a little longer. Okay, so yeah, I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of fool around with this a little bit more, and then we're just going to call it a drawing. And I think what I want to do is do what I did on the foot, where I'm just going to go over my line, especially on those far fingers, and make them go back. And I'm going to this is just going to give it like a little different texture. And I'm going to promote the little finger, and then let's just see if we can really cake this on and promote that little highlight over here. I'm going to lean back and a little work with my black pencil. All right, let's call this one done, and let's try out another drawing. What I'm going to do first is erase out my pivot lines without ruining the drawing, because I really like this hand. I think it's really dimensional, and I'm just going to get rid of the pivot lines, And I could have done this before, but I just want to show you how it's very important just to kind of like manhandle your drawings and not be so dainty with them. And there's like a couple things I just want to erase out a couple things over here. I'm just kind of going in this circular motion. Okay. And let's use the brush now and soften it. Okay, I'll never get rid of those lines totally unless I'm here for like 30 hours trying to erase them out. So let's just kind of go for it. Now, let's I really like this hand. It's like a real natural hand, and it really is showing the planes of the fingers. So this thing, let's just kind of go back and let's do what we've done on the two previous longer drawings. And the difference between a short drawing and a long drawing, in my opinion, partially, is matching values of the actual object that you're drawing. So what I'm trying to do right off the bat is I'm trying to match the values of the side planes. Okay, and that's going to be the difference between doing a shorty versus a longy. So now this thing I'm going to try to, it's a little skinnier than what I have over there, but let's just go for it. I'll fix it with my eraser. I'm just working all the side planes first. Okay, so this side plane and this again, I made it too thick in here. Yeah, pay attention to that negative space. Make this finger a little skinnier. Okay, and now this is just, we're just going to call this a shadow shape, and I'm making it a little bit more pronounced. And this is all shadow, but I can still show a little difference between the front plane and the side plane. Okay, so yeah, let's get rid of all this light. I'm just going down in that kind of fashion and downward stroke. So now this is side plane of the hand, and I think the big thing that I talked about on the first DVD about this hand is that, okay, it's a little bit more rolling around and it's not so box-like. Like right over here is the box of that hand, but it's not so box-like. It's a little bit more rounder because of the light. The light shift and the plane shift are not happening simultaneously. They're happening at different points in the drawing. So this is actually really good that I show you that. So now let's kind of come on in over here. A little side plane of those carpals. Right there is a carpal. And then I'm going to lower my ulna. Yeah, big time. I had it too high. And then that's just like a tonal shift of skin. Okay, that's my ulna going up, and then I've got a vein. I'm going to work a little bit into the forearm on this one. This is all side plane. And let's go a little bit darker here. And now let's wrap around with a beautiful candy cane line because it looks like a stripe on a candy cane. I'm slowly but surely having some of my funny school techniques creep into these DVDs. I mean, you gotta, I try to invent funny names because my drawing class is 6 hours And I'd like to say that everybody wants to be there for the full 6 hours and draw, but unfortunately some people don't. So I try to keep it funny for everybody in my classes, and so I invent these funny names for each technique, and that technique was the candy cane. And I'm probably going to put a DVD out in the future about line quality and tone. So candy cane line is like huge. So here's my stripe. It's also could be termed a phantom line because it's there, but it's not really there. So you gotta kind of look for it. Okay, so let's just wrap around. So now I'm going to go back to this finger, and let's just do a subtle gradation because this is so not as light as the top of the hand. And now let's just pay attention to this negative. Pencil's already dull, so I'm going to resharpen it. Okay. Yeah. Pay a little bit more attention to my contour, and let's try to fix it. Too dark. And let's just really show the plane shift / light and shade shift right over here. So we'll come in with a couple folds of skin on that particular phalanx, and then we've got a couple folds of skin going this way, so they're coming around, and we've got a vein over here. So all this stuff is put in, but it's put in very faintly. You don't want to use black outlines. And then over here I'm going to do the same thing where these two flanges kind of hook up. You've got all those folds of the skin because your skin is highly flexible and pliable right over there. So now we've got this like little convex line that is rolling into a phalanx, and then we have our last phalanx right over here. I bumped it up too much. I like the way that looks, so I'm just going to leave it. And then this is going to be another candy cane line that rolls into that nail, and this nail gets a little skinnier at the tip. Okay, these pencils are going really dull. I'm going to resharpen this. I'm working tiny right now. This is small. So I must have like a really sharp pencil in order to get this line quality, or else, I always joke and I say that, I have some students, their pencil tips become like a Mack truck. They're so wide and they lose like their finesse. So you got to constantly sharpen when you're working this small. Okay, let me step back, lean back. Do our tone. This rolls into that phalanx right over there. So it's really important. I guess it's critical to know your anatomy with the bones on the fingertips, because the fingertips are pretty bony on like a normal sized person, normal weighted person, I should say. So it's important to know how many there are. I remember when I first started drawing hands, it was like all a mystery to me. I didn't know what was going on under the skin. So now I do, and it's so much more helpful to make my drawings look a little bit more realistic without over-rendering. Okay, so let me these nails are cut pretty short, and then a couple of folds of skin over here and a little gradation. I'm going to lean back. I think I want to pay a bit more attention. Alright, so right now you can see I'm losing this finger. So let me step back now and let me come back in, and gravity's going to pull this down. This is going to come rolling in. And even though it's not really huge on the photo, gravity's going to pull that down. Gravity's going to pull that down. And I feel like I got my contour back a little bit. And let's promote the side plane a little bit more than the photo. Use our little artistic license there to promote the three-dimensional aspect of each individual finger. Alright. Now let's go back to the knuckles / vein. Like there's a vein right over here. So I'm going to represent that vein as just like a line. That's a side plane of that cylinder. And then we have carpal bones / tendon into the side plane of this metacarpal. And I'm just doing, what I'm looking at right now, is I'm paying attention to all the tonal shifts, and I'm thinking about where the light is coming from. And my tone is not perfect. This is getting very muddy over here, but I'm just going to leave it. And just let's try to push the veins a little bit more. I'm going to come on in, wrap in. Okay, so now I step back, and I'm going to promote the shadow on this finger so it's a little bit more solid, and I need to get rid of the light on this finger. All the fingers I'm going to get rid of the light because they're all going downward, and all the light should be concentrated on the top of the hand, a little bit on this finger. So it's a cylinder, so this is going to wrap around. So the nails, you got to be careful. You don't want to do them black, but you can't make them pure white if you're doing some kind of tone. And this is halfway tone, halfway line. Trying to find a happy medium. So now the side plane of the box of the wrist. Got a really cool vein. This is a little side plane box. And then we've got another cool vein over here. So I don't want to promote the veins too much. I just want to put in a hint of them. And then I'm just going to represent this forearm as a cylinder. Okay, so yeah, we're coming on down. Roll in. And let's go sharper with this. Beautiful convex right into that vein. Pay attention to the edge. It's not a straight line. Okay, good. So I don't like that. It just flattened it out. So I probably will fix that with that white pastel pencil. Put a little tone. Gotta have that atmosphere or else it's just going to be flat. I think this needs to be sharper and darker. The edge of that, the underplane of that ulna, I should say. And you can physically see that bone like right through the skin. And I'm not seeing too much of that radius. I'm just going to chisel this out. Little carpal right over there, indent. Thumb, I'm just going to kind of not work on too much on this because it's hidden by all the clothes. Let me just kind of work this. Okay, good. So underplane shadow right to that elbow. Let's not go up too high on this. And I think what I'm going to do is get rid of all of the light. And you see how I'm holding my pencil right now? I'm not holding it at the tip. I'm not holding it near the eraser. I'm just perfectly balanced with it. And you see the light line that I'm getting when, let's have the camera pan up over here. When I used to do this, like I would do it and I get like this black line. And I wouldn't be able to control myself in terms of like the line quality. So now I'm able to do this like very light line quality like this without cheating and holding my pencil back here. So that's something you want to practice at home. So if I go back to the hand now, the forearm, I'm holding my pencil this way. I'm working on my touch. I'm not heavy-handed. I guess one of my teachers when I was in college years and years ago, second year of college, my goodness, called me heavy-handed, and it was like devastating. And I didn't know what he meant, but then I realized it was so heavy on my hand, I wasn't able to do any of like this light stuff. And then, later on, I hurt my wrist, and that really messed me up in terms of being able to do light stuff, holding my pencil this way. So it's something you just want to practice. All right, so what I'm going to do next, take my brush and soften out. Okay, and I'm going to put some tone in the background. I'm going to go with the direction of the way the hand is going. And And I'm going to reverse gradate. Right now the forearm's flat. I need to punch up the darks. I don't think I'm going to work on this drawing that long. Okay, so let's go right through the fingers with this tone. Totally atmospheric. Fade off. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm probably going to just step back from this drawing. I want to look at it, and then we're going to come back and close it out. Let's finish this hand off. I stepped back from it. Boy, oh boy, I've been working on this hand for a while, and I just noticed this one thing. I wanted to just it's good that I show you like these quick changes. It's no big deal, but I wanted to just kind of tweak that, make it a little bit wider. And I noticed that this still needs to be much darker. If I'm going to be a purist and I want to match the value a little bit and really show that bone, I think it's beautiful when you do that, like on some of your figure drawings. I mean, some people don't like to draw really skinny people, but I like to, because I really like to see all the bones and muscles. Now, these carpals right over here, they need to be darker, because remember what I said, this is catching the most light. Mainly like over here is catching like a lot of light. This thing is just like a pure ball. The end of the ulna right over there. So I can go over this like a couple times in this repetitive motion. And let me get this vein in one more time, slash side of the radius, and let me wrap around with the candy cane line. Let me not lose that. Go over it. And now let me just go over here. And so let me refocus on this edge. Oh boy, I just did a terrible line over there. Wrap in right over here. And I went too dark with it, but let me see if I can salvage it. Yeah, it's coming right into this metacarpal. Okay, let me push this black. I'm working a little bit with line now. I don't want to overdo the tone. And I'm going to do a full-blown figure drawing on a DVD, and I'm really going to talk about background tone in detail on that. I know this DVD is about hands and feet, how to draw the hand and the foot. So, I mean, the background tone is not crucial, and I mentioned it very lightly over here. I think it's important that each drawing that you do has a minimal tone somewhere in it, in the background. And I think I've talked about it enough on this DVD. I just think it's good because that's what's going to create atmosphere. And I always tell the story about this one student I had many, many years ago who could render really great, but didn't matter how good he rendered because he never rendered into a tone, into an atmosphere, or into a shadow. And if you don't render into something, it's just like this flat drawing on like a white piece of paper, and there's no 3-dimension to it. So I'm going to be like a little bit of an extremist over here and press down a little bit harder just to promote the box. Okay, so where can we go from here? I think we're going to come down to the short roads on this hand. I'll just promote the in-between of the carpals. And I'm going to just resharpen this pencil. And then I'll pop some highlights, and we're going to call it a hand. Yeah, this is actually... Yeah, let's do that now. Let's just chisel with a beautiful line. Side of that phalanx. And let's put in some detail lines. Folds of the skin. Yeah, so that's going to come in. This is like really important at the end to just give yourself, like, you don't want to do what I'm doing in the beginning. You want to get the structure of the hand in. You want to think light and shade. You want to think planes. And then you get in these like little like tips or tidbits, I'm going to call them, of information that are just going to kind of like push your hand to the next level. And same thing with the foot. And so I'm just going to come in at the end here with a couple of these lines. Like, I know like when you're first getting into rendering. It's fun. I mean, it's just a cool thing to do to get all this in, but you don't want to do it in the first 20 minutes of the drawing. You want to establish the structure first. And I hated when my teachers used to teach me this, and when I was in college, like I'd have these little fine detail brushes, and they would come and take them out of my hand and give me like the biggest brush I could possibly have in my paint box that looked like I could paint the side of a house with it, and they would make me paint with that. And now 2020 hindsight, I look back at those days and I understand what they were trying to do was trying to get me to work with planes, and they were trying to get me to work with the big tonal areas, and I was like interested in eyelashes. So, this little thing that I'm doing over here, that's eyelashes. You don't need to do that in the initial stages of your drawing. You need to do that after you've gotten the, basic structure down and you have like a good structured hand that looks dimensional. All right, so let me just close some edges and maybe add a third value on this last phalanx. And now I'm just going to work a little bit with the white chalk. And we're going to call this thing done soon. Okay, so let me just promote the forearm a tad more. I want to show you, I'll probably flatten it out, but I just want to show you, like, see how this is just like looping? Let's take that thing and make it a little bit more complicated. So there's this vein that comes in, comes out. And this is, believe it or not, this is angles. But I'm doing angles now with a continuous line. And that just makes that whole thing a little bit more. Go over it now a couple of times so it's not so hard edge. Soften that line, because we talked about line thickness. And I'm not matching the values on this forearm, so it's never going to look as good as I want it to look. This thing is just really going to come right on in. Thumb muscles / vein right over there. Okay, so now let's do a little white chalk and have fun. Okay, so first place I'm going to do it, even though it doesn't really belong here. Just a little highlight on that bone. Alright, get my sound effects going. Oh, before I do this, I just noticed something. This is just too hard edge. And I don't like that. Yeah, that's okay looking, but we're just going to kind of leave it. Go over it, build up the white chalk. That's a bone right there that you're doing that highlight on. And this is just little finger muscles. And let's pop another bone. Metacarpal phalanx joint. Okay, good. And maybe like a little top plane over here. Top plane. And I just want to lighten this nail. And lighten this in strategic areas. So if I wanted to, like right over here, you probably won't pick it up because I don't have enough pencil down. All right, I think we're going to call this one done. I could push the values a little bit more, but I think you get it. So right now I'm really thinking about the whole shape of the foot, which to me is, this is a view from, I don't know if the camera just wants to pan up, and we'll show you at home what view this is from below. Okay, so you're in class, the model's on the model stand, and they're sitting down on the model stand. So now let's pan on down, and so I'm doing a quick gesture. And what am I thinking about now when I'm doing this? I'm thinking about the peanut shape. So I'm not drawing each individual toe first. That would be like the biggest mistake you can do. I'm drawing the overall shape of the bottom of the foot inside of a gesture. All right, so now what I'm going to do is get in a little bit of the lower leg. And as I'm doing this, in my mind, I am so thinking about the angles right now, but I'm not drawing the angles. I could, but I don't want to. I want to just draw in my own style. So now I'm going to come on in here. I'm looking at the negative space, and I could pull a line straight across from the ankle. Everything's just subtly, it's such not a straight line. And then we've got this one metatarsal slash phalanx that bows out over there. So I'm working on each individual toe, but before I do that, I'm going to do my best to get where the bottom of the foot actually meets the toes, and then this thing's going to wrap around, and that's kind of bulging out. We've got tons of folds of skin over here that are wrapping around, and gravity's going to pull that down slightly. So I'm really using organic line. So this is my heel, and sometimes if the model's walking in class, this heel pad is going to be really a little bit darker than the middle, the arch of the foot. And this is just a fold of skin near the Achilles tendon. So I'm getting that. So I've got the gesture now, and unfortunately on this foot I have to do some shading for you. But before I do the shading, let me just get in the toes. So now we've got that little convex, that little bump is just a phalanx. And then I'm going to get this in. So now let me get this little toe in. And now these are cylinders and spheres. Completely different than the planes right now from this point of view with the foot. So be careful when you're drawing these toes. Like, you want to say, all right, where's that toe? It's like right in the middle of the foot. So you don't get locked into that like tunnel vision thing. And then before you know it, you've drawn 5 toes and they're like only that low on your drawing. So you want to really look at the big picture when you're drawing these toes. And mine is very okay. Now let me get in this big toe. And yeah. If I pull a line straight down from that, we're going to call it toe number 2. Toe number 1 is going to be to the left. Okay, so cool. So that's my overall gesture. So now what I really need to cling on to is right over here, and I have to do it in a way where it's very faint. This is the line that separates my light from my dark. It's also the line that separates the side plane of the foot from the under plane. So I got to get that in. And then right over here, I'm going to get in this line too. And then just for argument's sake, I'm going to give myself a generic tone, just because it's going to be the quickest way I can do this for you at home to show the plane shift. And there's 2 different light sources hitting this foot, unfortunately, but there are. So now that's my generic like underplane. So now I could really now pay attention to all these like little folds. They're all wrapping around. And now I've got subtle tonal shifts and gradations inside the shadow. So I'm going to try to get some of those in, and then at the end I'll just like really use a nice sharp pencil and hammer it home. And the foot is actually casting a shadow on each individual toe. So I'm going to wrap this around the cylinder, and now I'm going to come on in and sharpen this a little bit, make it a little bit sharper than the photo reference that I'm working from. And yeah, let's just get in that really dark line. Okay, cool. So now I'm going to get a sharper pencil, and let's just kind of push this a little bit more. So there's all this padding, lots of padding on the bottom part of your foot. And it's just got to be a little bit softer. The top part of your foot is going to be a lot more bonier. Bottom part's going to be a whole lot more softer. Now I just saw what I don't like. This toe needs to come down. And this is all got to... The trick with drawing a foot is you can't use not one straight line. It all has to be like this organic stuff and all these like curves. So this is where this foot should really be dark, but it's catching that secondary light source. So I'm just going to try to pay attention to the values on the photo. And I don't want to get too hung up with the shading, but I think I have to just push it a little bit on this drawing. This is going to be a really hard edge line. That's the crunch of your peanut. And so now this, if I squint at the photo, that line that separates light from the dark, now the back of my heel is going to be like this roundish tone. So now my heel pad at the bottom of my foot, I'm going to make that a little bit darker just to show that there's a bend over here from the back of the heel to the bottom of the heel. Okay, and then a couple of lines, and then a little side plane to that tibia. And some of this stuff over here, I'll put it in Phantom-like and can just throw some of this Wrap around, wrap around, wrap around. Just make this a tad darker. And I should pay attention a little bit more to my toes, but I don't, like I said, I don't want to render anything. I just want to give you as much as I possibly can. So if I wanted to, right below this foot, I'm going to give you a gesture of the other one. I'm not going to finish it, but you see how organic that is and what makes it organic? There's no straight lines. There's a convex line that comes in, and I'm wrapping around the form. I'm not outlining. I'm varying my line quality. And then like right over here, this other foot, they're touching, so your darkest line should be where they're touching. And I'm going to give you a quick gesture for this one. Achilles tendon, Achilles, and then we've got this heel, and then my fibula. Okay, so then my only line that I would use right over here is that little doodad for a plane shift, and then this is just going to wrap around, wrap around.